The Gilded Age Season 3 Episode 7 pulled no punches. Bertha's empire is cracking. Oscar's heartbreak is hitting new lows, and George Russell? He might be the next man to fall, and not just in business. The knives are out, reputations are on the line, and every conversation feels like it's hiding a dagger behind a velvet glove. It all kicks off with Bertha Russell walking into enemy territory. And I'm not talking about Europe this time. The social battlefield has moved right into her own home. Word's out that her time overseas has left the gates open and the vultures are circling. Mrs. Astor is sniffing weakness, and the old money crew is already questioning whether Bertha still has the grip to host the next Newport ball. Bertha's return was supposed to be triumphant. Gladys' marriage to the Duke of Buckingham should have locked her place at the top. But the whispers say otherwise. And Bertha hears every one of them, but she doesn't flinch. Instead, she doubles down. She starts gathering her loyalists, throwing subtle shade at the ones who dare to doubt her. The problem, her usual allies are nowhere to be found. Aurora Fane is suddenly distant, Mira's too busy covering her own scandal, and Larry? He's not just pulling away from society, he's pulling away from her. The cracks in the Russell family are no longer subtle. They're showing, and they're growing fast. Meanwhile, George is drowning in work drama. His enemies in the railroad game have been quiet to quiet. He senses a trap coming but doesn't know from where, and Bertha, she's too consumed by society politics to even ask. When George hints at financial pressure, Bertha brushes him off. Talking about ball guest lists and French caterers, it's giving major disconnect energy. You can feel the tension in every scene, and when Larry confronts his father about being left out of key business decisions, George snaps. You wanted? Prove you're not just your mother's son. Ouch. The daddy issues jumped out. While the Russells are unraveling, across town Marion Brooke is stuck in her own emotional spiral. She's still dodging Larry after their last blow-up. But it's clear she's not over him. Ada tells her to let it go, to stop waiting for someone to love her the way she wants. But Marion isn't ready to give up. She keeps rereading his last letter, analyzing every word like it's scripture. When they finally run into each other at a suffrage event, the tension is thick. Larry looks wrecked, Marion looks torn, and neither of them says what they really feel. It's a missed moment that hurts more than a full-blown fight. But girl, Oscar Van Ryn is the one who's really spiraling after John's death. He's been operating on autopilot, numb, cold, unreachable. Agnes thinks he's just being his usual difficult self. She has no idea the man she raised is grieving a love she never knew existed. In one scene, he snaps at her during dinner when she jokes about his lack of romantic prospects. Some people don't get that luxury, he says quietly. It's heartbreaking. And it's the most honest we've ever seen him. And let's not forget Peggy Scott. While the Russells and Van Ryns play dress up with their drama, Peggy is out here putting in work. She's organizing voter drives, writing for the paper, and trying to keep the suffrage movement from collapsing under its own racism. When a white ally suggests waiting for the right time to support black women voters, Peggy lays it out plain. The right time was yesterday, the next best time is now, period. But the pressure is on. A rival reporter threatens to leak her adoption past, and suddenly everything she's built is at risk. And just when you think things can't get more chaotic, Ward McAllister's name pops up again. Yup, the ghost of scandals past is haunting the social scene. He's been spotted at smaller salons, trying to claw his way back into relevance. Rumors say he's penning another book, and if it drops, the entire old money crew might go down. With him, the last time he spilled secrets, people got cut from guest lists. This time, he might get someone cut out of a will, or worse. Bertha hears the rumors and starts planning. If Ward's coming back, she's going to use him. Maybe even control him, but it's risky because if Ward betrays her, and let's be real, he's done it before, the fallout could destroy what's left of her reputation. And with George distracted and Larry resentful, Bertha may be more alone than she's ever been. And here's the part that really hit. All these plots, from Oscar's quiet grief to Peggy's political battles, Marion's confusion, and Bertha's war games, they're all about one thing: power. Who has it, who wants it, and who's about to lose it. The Gilded Age is reminding us that behind every corset and champagne flute is a fight for survival, and the knives are getting sharper. Let's talk about George Russell, because in episode 7, the walls are seriously closing in, and fast. After years of winning every power move in business, he's now walking straight into a trap that's been silently building behind his back. The Illinois Central line is on shaky ground, and the stock vultures are circling. George's trusted associate, Clay, is out here making secret moves. And you can feel it. George senses betrayal, but he's not sure who's holding the knife yet. His board is losing faith. Whispers of a hostile takeover are gaining momentum. And the worst part, he's hiding it all from Bertha. That silence, it's not protection, it's poison. George thinks he's buying himself time, but business moves fast and enemies move faster. One wrong step and everything he built, the legacy, the empire, the power, could crumble. And guess what? He's already slipping. His refusal to loop Larry in is costing him more than he realizes. Larry might still be green, but he's not stupid. He knows something's off. And the fact that his father treats him like a background character, yeah, it's pushing him closer to the edge, or worse, to someone else's camp. And if Larry ends up flipping sides, George won't just lose a son, he'll lose an heir. Now flip back to Bertha. While George is dodging bullets in the boardroom, she's in a whole different kind of war zone. The parlor. Bertha's trying to wrangle the Newport ball while finessing a new alliance with women she used to treat like wallpaper. She needs them now, which means playing nice with people like Mrs. Winterton, yes. The same woman who once whispered that Bertha was new money with old furniture. Bertha swallows her pride, but you can see the fury simmering under every smile. She's planning something, and when Bertha's quiet, that's when she's the most dangerous. But just when she thinks she's regaining her footing, a new scandal hits, one that shakes the very foundation she's built her status on. A leaked telegram from London suggests that Gladys Duke isn't exactly the upstanding royal Bertha painted him to be. Allegations of gambling debts, mistresses, and political scandal start surfacing. The whispers are loud, and suddenly Bertha's golden ticket to aristocratic respectability, it's starting to look a little tarnished. Aurora, who's been keeping her distance, suddenly reappears, but not to support Bertha. She's there to warn her the old money girls are regrouping. And they're not just planning to freeze Bertha out, they're planning to crown someone new. And you know whose name is floating to the top? Marion Brooke. Yep. The same Marion who once swore she didn't care about society is now being whispered about as the modern face of old money. The irony, Bertha built the bridge that's now being used to push her out. Ouch. Meanwhile, Marion herself is caught between two worlds. On one hand, she's being courted by high society to step up, to be the new belle of the ball. On the other, she's still emotionally tied to Larry. After getting confirmation from Jack that Larry wasn't doing anything shady at the Haymarket, Marion starts doubting her decision to end things, but her pride and her fear of being hurt again are keeping her frozen every time they're in the same room. The air is thick with regret. You can practically feel the what-if hanging between them like fog. Peggy's also reaching a breaking point. Elizabeth, William's mother, has been running her mouth all over town, and it's working. Invitations are drying up, and Peggy's name is being dragged through parlors like it's gossip gold. But when William confronts his mother, demanding she stop interfering, Elizabeth drops the bomb. She lied to you. She has secrets, dangerous ones. It's a low blow, and William's stunned. Not because he believes her, but because he realizes how far his mother will go to control his life. Peggy, meanwhile, is preparing to speak at a major suffrage event. One that could shift the whole movement in New York, but the pressure is insane. Her editor warns her, one wrong word and they'll call you angry, one wrong look, and you're out. It's the exhausting double standard of being a black woman in that world. And Peggy is carrying it all with a quiet kind of strength. When she finally steps up to the podium and delivers a speech that blends her personal pain with political power, the room falls silent, not out of politeness, out of shock. She says the truth with her whole chest. Respectability was never protection. Power comes from taking up space, not shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. Chills. Oscar, still grieving, begins pulling away from everything, even the possibility of a future. When Marion visits him, she finds the usually sharp-tongued Oscar quiet, numb, and honestly lost. He confesses that he's considering leaving New York. There's no place for someone like me here, he says. Marion begs him to stay, telling him his truth matters. It's one of the rarest moments of true love, not romantic, but deep, unwavering friendship. But Oscar doesn't respond. He just stares out the window, as if searching for a version of himself that still fits into this glittering, gilded world. And then comes the final twist of this section, a quiet conversation between Clay and an unnamed man outside the train station. No names are said. Just a simple exchange. Russell won't see it coming. Girl, my heart dropped. Is Clay planning a takedown? Is this the beginning of the gunshot cliffhanger we know is coming in episode 8? Because if so, the Russells, and honestly, the entire city, better brace for impact. The storm isn't coming. It's already here. Things get messier than a debutante's diary after a scandalous ball, because in episode 7, the Gilded Age doesn't slow down. It accelerates the chaos, and baby, we're not even halfway through the damage yet. We start this section with Agnes Van Rijn because, she's out here serving cold, hard judgment like it's tea time. Agnes has always been the keeper of old money snobbery, but lately, her control over the Van Rijn household is slipping and she knows it. Her fortune is fading. Her influence is shrinking, and worst of all, her niece, Marion, is becoming her own woman and not the kind of woman Agnes would approve of. Marion's involvement in the suffrage cause is the last straw. Agnes sees it as reckless, unbecoming, and just plain unladylike. But Marion's not asking for permission anymore. She wants purpose. Something beyond the opera and sitting room politics. When Agnes confronts her, the gloves come off. Marion calls her out for living in fear of scandal, of change, of losing control. Agnes fires back with, "Dignity is not fear, it is survival." That line, iconic and revealing. Because deep down, Agnes isn't just trying to preserve society. She's trying to preserve herself in a world that's moving on without her. Meanwhile, across town, Bertha Russell is plotting her next big move. Her entire identity is built around being the woman, the one who controls the guest lists, the press. The image of what power looks like in a woman's gown. But with the cracks in her marriage growing deeper, her daughter's royal scandal leaking, and her social crown slipping, Bertha starts to realize something chilling. She's becoming the very thing she once despised, a woman whose worth depends on who's beside her, not who she is. She doesn't like that feeling. So, what does Bertha do? She gets ruthless. She starts cutting deals with people she used to ignore. The same social climbers she once rolled her eyes at are now her pawns, and most shocking, she reaches out toward McAllister. Yes, that messy man with the scandalous pen. She invites him to a private dinner and proposes a deal, spin the Gladys scandal in her favor, leak fake praise to the press, and maybe, just maybe, she'll help him re-enter society. It's a risky play, and you can see the glint in Ward's eye. He's tempted, but can he be trusted? Girl, we know the answer to that one. While Bertha is scheming, George is panicking. The boardroom backstabbing is heating up. A surprise audit reveals that someone inside Merrick is leaking financial documents to a rival railroad. George narrows it down to two suspects, Clay, who's been acting shady for episodes, and a junior associate named Elias who's suddenly gone missing. It's giving major someone's about to get shot energy, but George still refuses to tell Bertha. He thinks he can handle it alone. Boy, has he learned nothing? Back in the social sphere, Oscar Van Rijn is drifting. After the blow-up with Agnes and the quiet heartbreak of losing John, Oscar's clinging to the one thing he still has, his mask. He plays his role in public, charming, witty, a little reckless, but in private he's unraveling. He visits Livingston Manor, the country home John's sister gifted him, and you can feel the grief settle in his bones. This was supposed to be their escape plan, their future, and now it's just empty. In a haunting scene, Oscar walks through the rooms, untouched since John's death, and finds a letter John never sent. It's short, simple, and devastating. "One day, we won't have to hide. Until then, I'm yours." Oscar breaks fully, and it's the first time we see him cry, really cry. No cutting sarcasm, no sharp retorts, just raw pain. It's a turning point. Either he lets this grief consume him, or he finally steps into his truth and stops pretending. And girl, speaking of truth, Peggy Scott is done hiding. Elizabeth's smear campaign is in full swing, but William, he's not playing his mother's game. He shows up to Peggy's office and tells her point blank, "I want to know your story, not hers." Peggy finally opens up. She tells him about the child she lost, the marriage that stole her choice, and the grief that shaped her. She doesn't sugarcoat it, and William, he listens, doesn't interrupt, doesn't flinch, just holds her hand and says, "Thank you." That moment, it's not flashy, but it's powerful, it's earned, and I'm not crying, you are. But don't get too comfortable, because the next scene, boom, Bertha finds out about George's audit problems from someone else, not from her husband, not from Larry. From a smug rival at a luncheon who drops the news like a bomb. "I hear the Russell men are bleeding money." How tragic. Bertha's face freezes, the rage behind her eyes, glorious. She excuses herself politely, walks straight into her carriage, and you know what she does? She cancels the rest of her day. Unheard of. Bertha Russell never cancels. But today, she's not just angry, she's planning war. She arrives home and confronts George. "It's not a fight, it's a showdown. You kept secrets," she says. "You made me look weak." George fires back with, "You were too busy with your balls and banquets." Boom. That line lands like a slap, and just like that, we're staring down the barrel of a Russell implosion. And in the final moments of this section, we see Larry alone, sitting on a bench outside Marion's brownstone. He looks up, hopeful, desperate, but she never comes out. The light in the window turns off, and all we hear is the sound of a clock ticking. The episode isn't over, but the damage is done. Betrayals have been set in motion, hearts have been cracked open, and the kindling for the fire in Episode 8? It's been lit. By the time we reach the second half of Episode 7, it's not just the gowns and gaslights catching fire, it's reputations, relationships, and every fragile truth these characters have been clinging to, and you can feel it. That tight, breathless tension like something is about to explode. Because nothing in the Gilded Age stays hidden for long, especially not secrets born out of ambition, betrayal, or heartbreak. Let's start with the Russells because George and Bertha, they've officially reached their boiling point. After Bertha's furious discovery about George's business troubles and the fact he kept her in the dark, the power dynamic in their marriage shifts completely. For years, Bertha's played the social game while George handled the financial empire, but now she's stepping into his world with a vengeance. She demands a meeting with his board, uninvited, and walks into the room like she owns it. Not to make peace, but to make it known that no matter what happens to George, she is still a force to be feared. And girl, the men in that room were shook. One even tries to brush her off with this is a private matter, and Bertha fires back with, there's nothing private about watching my family be dismantled in front of society's eyes. Oop, Bertha isn't just protecting her man, she's protecting the brand, the Russell name. And if that means taking over the business side to clean up George's mess, she'll do it in a corset and heels with a smile on her face, cold, calculated, iconic. But what she doesn't know is that George's situation is more dire than she realizes. That mystery man Clay met at the train station, he's not just a rival investor. He's a hitman hired by someone way above George's pay grade. Someone who doesn't just want George ruined, they want him gone. There's a quiet scene where Clay hands off a small envelope and mutters, he'll be at the office late. No guards. That line? It changed the whole game, because now we know Episode 8's gunshots weren't random. They were premeditated. Meanwhile, Marian is having a crisis of conscience. She's pulled in 3 different directions: her growing involvement in the suffrage movement, her complicated love for Larry, and this bizarre new attention from society women who suddenly see her as the girl of old. Money rebirth, the pressure's unreal. One minute she's being asked to co-host a gala with Mrs. Astor's niece. The next she's bumping into Bertha at a luncheon and being subtly warned to know where you belong. It's giving Regina George energy with a Victorian twist. And Marian is caught in the crossfire. To make things worse, she finally talks to Larry again. It's brief, tense, painful. Larry apologizes. He says he should have told her everything about the Haymarket, about the business issues with his father, about how scared he is of turning into a pawn in Bertha's empire. Marian listens, but her walls are up. She tells him, I'm tired of being someone's second thought. Ouch, Larry looks like he's been punched in the gut, and maybe he has, because for once, he doesn't have a clever comeback. He just watches her walk away. But Oscar? He's walking towards something. After days of isolating, grieving, and pretending everything's fine, he makes a bold move. He returns to the Van Ryn house and sits down with Agnes for the first time in their lives. He opens the door, just a crack, to his truth. He doesn't come out fully, but he talks about John, about the grief, about the love, and Agnes, instead of lashing out, just listens. Her face says everything: shock, confusion, discomfort, but also heartbreak. Because deep down, she knows she never really saw her son. And now she might not have the time to fix that. And just as Oscar begins finding his voice, Peggy is preparing for her biggest public test. Yet, the suffrage rally in Central Park is happening, and she's been asked to speak in front of hundreds, mostly white women who still don't fully believe black women belong in the movement. But Peggy's not here to ask for a seat at the table. She's building her own table. Her speech? It's not polite, it's powerful. She calls out the racism in the movement, the hypocrisy of preaching equality while excluding black women from leadership, and the brutal history that her community still carries. The crowd is stunned, some applaud, some walk away, but William, he's front row. And when Peggy locks eyes with him, you can tell, this is the moment she stops being someone he admires and starts being someone he fears losing. But girl, the real bombshell of this episode isn't in the ballrooms, the rallies, or the dinner tables. It's in George's office, and it's ticking. George is working late, alone, reviewing documents, trying to patch together what's left of his financial leverage. He doesn't hear the door open. His secretary is the first to see the man in the dark coat. But before she can scream, bang, she goes down. George stands, stunned, blood on the floor, the air sharp with silence. Then the gun turns to him. We don't see the shooter's face, just a hand, a trigger. And then, blackout. Y'all, I have chills just typing this, because that final image isn't just about George. It's about every power player in this world who thinks they're untouchable. Every secret, every manipulation, every mask, it's all catching up fast. And now, we're heading into the finale with the Russell family on the brink of destruction. A society torn between tradition and revolution, and a bullet that might just change the course of everything. After that gunshot blackout in George Russell's office, Episode 7 leaves us dangling over a cliff with no rope. And you can feel it. This isn't just the end of a scene, it's the beginning of a reckoning. The kind where alliances shift, secrets spill, and the masks everyone's been wearing finally come off. This episode didn't just build tension. It cracked it open and let the chaos flood in, and now we're watching all the pieces scatter. But let's rewind just slightly before the shot rang out, because the hours leading up to it tell us everything. George knew something was wrong, his instincts were buzzing, his business enemies were too quiet. And even Larry had warned him subtly that something felt off, but George, ever the proud lion, ignored every sign. He thought money could fix it, power could shield him. But this is personal. The shooter wasn't after shares or secrets, he was after blood. And whoever sent him didn't just want George ruined, they wanted him erased. And let's talk about Bertha, because at this point in the episode, she's still in the dark. She's at home finalizing plans for an exclusive post-Newport luncheon, trying to salvage her social standing after the Duke drama. Everything about her feels sharp, calculated, a woman trying to reassert dominance over a kingdom that's slipping through her fingers. She's moving pawns, rescheduling a performance with Christine Nilsson, rerouting invites through Aurora Fane's frenemy circle, even considering letting divorced women formally attend the next season's events. Bold moves for 1884, scandalous but strategic. Because Bertha's not just reinventing herself, she's reinventing society. But just as she makes her biggest chess move, inviting a newly shamed socialite to dinner, as a way to flip the narrative, she gets the news. A messenger arrives. George's office, gunshots, no details yet, her face stone, no tears, no gasp. Just a steely silence. Then she stands up, straightens her bodice, and says, "Cancel everything." That moment, it's chilling because Bertha Russell doesn't cancel for anything. And now, she's about to storm the world that tried to take her husband from her, y'all. She's not just coming for answers, she's coming for revenge. Meanwhile, the ripple effects start spreading. Larry hears the news and sprints from a business dinner, ignoring whispers of drama in the Russell family. Again, he gets to the office, sees the blood, the glass, the body of his father's secretary being rolled out. And something in him breaks. The anger, the sadness, the guilt for pulling away from George in the days before. It all hits at once. But then he hears something even more terrifying. George survived, barely, but he's unconscious, critical, and the doctors aren't sure if he'll wake up. Larry sits outside the hospital, shaking. And that's when Bertha arrives, not crying, not flustered, but ready to move. She tells Larry, "If we wait for them to come to us, we lose. I want a list of everyone who stood to gain from your father's fall. Every name, every company, every so-called ally." Larry, shocked, asks, "And then what?" Her answer, "Then we make them regret breathing." Girl, that line chills. Back in Brooklyn, Peggy gets word of the shooting from the newsroom, and what's wild is, her first thought isn't about George, it's about Bertha. The tension between those two has always been thick, even if they barely share scenes. They represent two sides of ambition, one born from privilege, one from resistance. And now, with George's future in jeopardy, Peggy wonders, if Bertha burns the world down in revenge, who gets caught in the flames? And speaking of caught, Oscar Van Ryn finds himself tangled in a whole new mess. Just when he thought he could breathe again after opening up to Agnes, a new visitor shows up at Livingston Manor, a man named Edward, someone from Oscar's past. And not just any past, the past. Edward is someone Oscar once loved, before John, before the mask. And now, he's back in New York, wealthier, bolder, and with his own agenda. Edward tells Oscar that John's death shook him, that he's tired of hiding too. He offers Oscar something dangerous, a public partnership. Not marriage, not in 1884, but something close, real, open, and Oscar is terrified. He wants it. You can see it in his eyes, but he also knows what it could cost him. The Van Ryn name, the house, his mother's respect, thin as it is. And more than anything, he fears the power of hope, because if he says yes and it falls apart, it'll destroy him. Across town, Marion is spiraling after her brutal final conversation with Larry. And now hearing about the shooting, she's haunted by the what-ifs. What if she hadn't pushed him away? What if she'd stayed? What if Larry loses his father without ever hearing how much she still cares? Ada finds her crying silently in the music room, holding the letter Larry once wrote her. Ada, in her quiet wisdom, says, "You keep waiting for love that's guaranteed. That kind doesn't exist." Marion looks up, broken, and that's when Ada adds, "But the kind worth having? That's the one you risk everything for." It's a turning point, for Marion, for Larry, for everyone. Because George Russell's shooting didn't just rock the family. It shook the entire foundation of New York's power structure. People start whispering, if George can be touched, anyone can. Even Agnes, who rarely leaves her house, feels it. She tells Oscar that this city is becoming something she no longer recognizes. Too much ambition, not enough honor. But Oscar isn't so sure. He looks at his mother, then at Edward's calling card in his hand and says, Maybe it's finally becoming honest, and just as the episode winds down, we get one more twist. A letter arrives at the Russell estate. No return address, no names, just one sentence, handwritten in ink. This isn't over. Bertha reads it. And for the first time in the whole episode, she smiles. The aftermath of the shooting isn't just chaos, it's chess, and Bertha Russell, she's making moves like a queen who just realized the board was rigged against her the whole time. With George in critical condition and no one claiming responsibility, she launches a silent campaign of vengeance. No announcements, no crying to the press, no waiting around. She calls in every favor, every debt, every person she's ever helped claw their way into society, and she cashes all of it in. Y'all, this is Bertha with the gloves off. And trust me, you don't want to blink. She starts with the inner circle. Aurora Fane, Mrs. Winterton, even Maud Beaton. Bertha doesn't care if they're old money, new money, or fake money as long as they have information. And when they hesitate, she reminds them exactly how much she controls. Remember when Bertha said she was going to shape society her way? This episode, she proves it. Quietly, forcefully, and without a single ounce of mercy. And here's the gag as all this plays out. Larry Russell transforms, the spoiled golden boy of season 1, gone. What we see now is a man stepping into power not just to defend his father, but to protect the empire and the people George never trusted. Larry starts talking directly to board members, questioning loyalties, and even threatening to sell off parts of Russell Steel just to see who flinches. It's bold, risky, but effective. One board member tries to play slick talks in circles, makes failed threats. Larry just stares and says, "Say it with your chest, or don't speak at all." Girl, who is this man? But while the Russells are going full throttle, trouble's brewing on the other side of town too. The Van Ryn house is thick with tension. Agnes, ever the eagle, senses something is off with Oscar. She's noticed the visits, the silence, the small eyes, and while she doesn't know exactly what's going on, she knows her son is on the edge of something life-altering. She confronts him not with anger, but with a strange gentleness. "If you're going to destroy your life," she says, "do it for love, not for cowardice." And for a moment, Oscar doesn't have a comeback. He just nods. Meanwhile, Marion makes a move of her own. For once, she doesn't wait to be chosen. She shows up at the hospital. Alone, no chaperone, no excuses, just her and her heart in her hands. She walks in on Bertha and Larry mid-conversation and says one line that freezes the room. "I want to be here when he wakes up." Bertha looks at her, that icy stare fully activated, and if he doesn't, she asks. Marion, voice trembling but clear, says, "Then I'll still be here." Girl, let me tell you. Even Bertha couldn't hide the flicker of surprise. She doesn't smile, but she nods just once. That's the closest thing to a blessing Marion's ever gonna get from the Queen of Fifth Avenue. Back in Brooklyn, Peggy is chasing a new lead, a whispered theory that the shooting wasn't about business at all, but about politics. Someone from Washington, someone angry at George's influence over the railroads. She tries to pitch it to her editor, but he says it's too dangerous. She pushes back hard, saying if they don't tell the truth now, they're just as complicit. And he relents, tells her, write it, but be ready to run, because if her theory is right, she's about to make enemies with people way above New York's elite. And just when we think the drama's peaking, guess who re-enters the picture? Mrs. Astor, quietly, elegantly. She pays a private visit to the Russell home. No press, no public appearances, just a short moment with Bertha, where she says something cryptic. Power is only dangerous when it's uncontrolled. "You've earned your seat, don't burn the table." Bertha doesn't answer, she just pours tea. Y'all, what does that mean? Is she warning Bertha or challenging her? And then we get the final moments of episode 7. George Russell opens his eyes, barely. He sees Bertha, Larry, and Marion. He tries to speak but can't. Instead, he motions for a pen. With shaking hands, he writes 3 words on a notepad. Watch the board. Fade to black. Now tell me who sent the shooter. Is it someone we already know? Was this a move from the railroad enemies? Or something deeper, like revenge from a political player we haven't even clocked yet? What does George know that nobody else does? And how will Bertha play this game when the board is rigged and the stakes are deadly? Drop your theories below, because episode 8 is about to be the real war. And don't forget, every single move in this show has been calculated. Nothing's random. If Bertha's smiling and George is writing cryptic notes, you know the final act is about to snap. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this and hit the comments. Are you Team Bertha, Team Marion, or Team Chaos?